Our speaker today is Rod Johnson. I've known Rod for a number of years. These things are terrible. Anyone can get up and read these cards like that. Can you imagine putting white on that and trying to read it? You got to really want it. You got to really want it, yeah.
Kathy, we got another older guy.
Yeah.
Industry Relations Manager for Nebraska, Midwest Dairy Association, or Midwest Dairy. And I guess Rod's going to talk to us a little bit about all the checkoffs, where the checkoff funding goes for dairy. And so without that, I'll just introduce Rod. And I told him if he wanted to say anything else about his background, he could say, because I didn't want to bring up anything he didn't want me to say.
Jeff and I spend, I was going to say too much, but he said it for me, so we spend too much time together, it seems like, here lately. We work an awful lot together on some of the dairy issues that are out there. I wear two hats. I'm with the Midwest Dairy Association, which is the dairy checkoff organization. That's what I'll talk about mostly here. But then I also wear a hat with the Nebraska State Dairy Association, which is the producer group. And that group right now is very involved in trying to figure out a way to grow the dairy industry in Nebraska. So Jeff is only semi-retired. He's still working the dairy industry with us. I'll let Jeff pass out some brochures about the dairy industry in Nebraska. The brochure is going to say that we have about 230 dairies in Nebraska. That number is variable. And it's on the downward slide, so if you went out and we tried to count today, that 230 would not be accurate, I'm sure. But as far as dairy production in the state, it says here that we're producing about 135 million gallons a year, which a dairy cow basically produces roughly 2,000 gallons a year. So do the math, and that puts us up there approaching 60,000 cows in the state, and it stayed pretty steady. As we first were sitting down here, I was asked about the large dairies coming in, and there hasn't been a whole lot of change in the dairy numbers right now as far as cows are concerned. When we've had lost some smaller dairies, why the others have kind of expanded a little bit, so the total number of dairies is going down, but the number of cows is staying pretty constant. Working for the checkoff organization, up until 2 years ago this January, there was a independent state organization that managed dairy checkoff. Dairy producers contribute 15 cents per 100 pounds of milk that they produce into the checkoff program, and that goes into education, research, and promotion of the industry. From a simple math standpoint, if they're producing 2,000 pounds or 2,000 gallons per day, when you do all the calculations, it turns out that dairy farmers are contributing about $25 to $35 per cow into the checkoff program every year. That is their way of promoting their industry. When you compare that to other checkoff programs, the beef industry, they pay $1 each time they sell an animal. So they pay $1 and we're paying roughly $30 per year, and then they still pay the $1 into the beef checkoff when the cow goes to market at the end of her production career. So the dairy farmers are very committed to putting funds into their program. Basically what that money is used for is used to promote dairy product after it's been harvested or after the cow has been milked. There's none of those dollars actually go into any production research or production related programs, and it does not go into anything that is politically connected in any way. It's strictly into promoting the products. The main program that the dairy industry is behind right now is called Fuel Up to Play 60. And if you've watched any NFL games, a lot of times there'll be a commercial comes in and players are out there working with kids, and that Play 60 comes on the screen. You've probably seen that. That is kind of half of the program. The dairy industry has a contract or has a relationship between the USDA, the NFL and the dairy producers across the country, and they have committed $50 million a year for 5 years into this Fuel Up to Play 60 program, which is designed to encourage good nutrition in the schools, and then also fitness in 60 minutes of activity, exercise every day. So this has been a very active program. In the state of Nebraska, we have about 1,000 schools that have signed up into the program. And as they develop their program within the schools, they're able to use the program to try new lunch menu items. It's all designed to be nutritious, using fruits and vegetables, grains, lean meats, and of course dairy products into their diet. So this is kind of where the program is coming from. And as the schools develop their program or their plays, so to speak, using the NFL connection there, they call them plays. And as they develop their program, they can apply for funding back from the program for trying new menu items, developing breakfast programs, creating or getting new exercise programs and things like that. In the state of Nebraska, there's been about $260,000, $270,000 go back into the schools to help them develop some of their programs, and that those dollars have gone to something less than 100 schools out of that 1,000. So we've got a long ways to go to keep getting the programs developed and going further. But this is one of the big commitments that the dairy industry has made to fight obesity. And bottom line is, if kids get to recognizing dairy products when they're in school, we hope that they continue that taste for dairy on through life. Dairy consumption, for the most part, is on a gradual incline as far as total dairy products, but fluid milk has been on a decline for a number of years, and part of that has created a shift in the way milk is marketed. Dairy checkoff programs used to advertise just basically drink milk on TV or wherever, but they found out that was not a very effective way of doing it. So they have kind of shifted into some partnership programs. And through these partnerships, they're getting basically branded products to promote the products out there individually, and the consumer is more able to identify with a product rather than just a bulk commodity of milk. One of the places that we've done an awful lot of work there is in the McDonald's program. McDonald's being the largest number of franchise quick food places in the country, recognize the amount of people that go to McDonald's every day for a meal or a break, a beverage, or whatever. And so the dairy checkoff program is the only commodity checkoff that specifically has 5 or 6 employees that go to work every morning at McDonald's headquarters. They're in the Chicago area, and they work for the dairy checkoff, but they're in there helping develop new products that promote the dairy industry. And these cards that Jeff is passing out, will take that to McDonald's and get a free coffee or McCafe drink, they call them. The smoothies, the hot coffees, and some of those things. Those things are all developed through the efforts of the dairy farmers. And what we have found is when McDonald's created a new product, all of a sudden there's a snowball effect. The Wendy's and the Burger Kings and everybody else starts copying those products. And the overall effect has been very dramatic into increasing consumption of dairy products. They're also working on some of the new sandwiches, simple things like getting them to put 2 slices of cheese on a burger instead of 1. All of a sudden you've doubled the amount of cheese that's being put out into the industry. But along the way, there's also an awful lot of dollars that are getting put into research. In the cheese area specifically, the salt content of cheese has been a very critical factor. So that has been one of the research areas that the dairy checkoff dollars have gone into to work on the healthy side of consuming some of those kind of products. So that's just one of those things that we have been very involved with. And another area, the checkoff really has looked at is the pizza industry. Pizza consumes an awful lot of cheese, but over the years, the last 2 or 3 years, you've probably seen a lot of commercials where Domino's has redesigned their pizza, and they've started coming out with new pizzas. Well, that was a direct response to the Dairy Checkoff working with them. They had gotten into some of the imitation cheeses, and they were putting less and less product on the pizzas, and as a result of that, their sales were going down. And the dairy industry worked with them to get back to using real cheese and putting more cheese on the pizzas and working in ways to make it a nutritious product, but yet using more dairy. And it's had a dramatic effect on McDonald's Corporation, or the Domino's Corporation. But along the way, they worked with Pizza Hut, they worked with Papa John's, and all the different pizza lines, because that is a major area of consumption. About 25% of all the dairy produced in the country goes on to pizzas. So that's a very major factor. Going back to some of the coffees and the things that we talked about for McDonald's, I found it very interesting that Starbucks, what do you think of when you think of Starbucks? Coffee. They consume or distribute almost 3% of all the dairy products in the country produced go through Starbucks. They are a dairy product that puts coffee into their dairy, is about what it amounts to. Talked about Jeff and I getting together quite a bit. We happened to meet at one of the scooters out on the south side of town that's kind of in between where both of us live. And one day I was asking the manager of that scooters, so all these coffee drinks, how much milk is really going through here? And he said, well, probably 90% of what we sell is milk. So 90%. So, that's, the perception is coffee, but the reality is it's good for the dairy industry. So you don't have to feel so bad about that $3 or $4 cup of coffee. It's really got a lot of good milk in it. Nutrition. Milk has 9 essential nutritional nutrients in it, so it's good for you. That's the bottom line. Some of the other things that, when it's getting close to my time being up, you better stop me because I'll just keep going.
1:30 way on the other side of town. I got to drive you down. So.
Some of the other things that I do in industry relations, let me back up just a little bit. Midwest Dairy Association is a 10-state regional organization for the Checkoff, headquartered in St. Paul, Minnesota, and Nebraska was a standalone Checkoff organization until 2 years ago when they merged with Midwest Dairy to gain the strength of about a 60-member staff and a lot of the resources that are available that way. In Nebraska, I am involved with industry relations, and then we have 2 registered dietitians that work in the healthcare and the schools programs. So that's where the thing is really focused. As far as myself, some of the things that I work with primarily is what we call a People Behind the Product program, which is helping people with the image of the dairy producer and the dairy industry. These days, as each of us gets farther and farther away from the farm and each generation has less of a connection to the farm, we're here trying to promote the farmer, promote the dairy producer, promote the healthy image that we need to have for our industry. So that's where I spend an awful lot of my time. Like I said, we've got people behind the product. We've got a From Farm to Food to You program that goes into a lot of the schools. A lot of the counties around have what they call Day at the Farm for the kids. We get involved in a lot of those, showing them the process of milk getting from the farm to the retail shelf, basically. Some of the questions that we get asked about are, is milk safe? Milk is tested from the time it leaves the cow until it hits the shelf, as far as bacteria, antibiotics, anything like that. These days, back in the old days when some of us were still milking cows by hand and into the open bucket, some of those kind of things, the quality of milk could have been very questionable. these days milk is very sanitized. It goes through a system that it never is exposed to the air, never exposed to human hands or anything like that. It's chilled immediately as soon as it leaves the cow. And a lot of times, within a minute, it drops from the 100-degree body temperature and get it down into about the 40-degree temperature as quickly as possible. And in a lot of cases, that's happening in about a minute after it leaves the cow. So the equipment, the systems that are involved in a milking operation are very sophisticated. The cows are all tracked electronically with computer and chips in them. Every day, a dairy can go in and monitor what their cows are producing on an individual basis. They keep track of how many steps they're taking, how active they are, to see they can pick up on diseases or an issue within the animal before the animal even knows it's there, basically, because they can monitor every activity of that animal. So it's very, very high tech, is what I guess you would call it. But we try to inform people how safe the milk is and how wholesome and how well the product is taken care of and delivered to the store. We have a lot of programs where we work with the retailers to make sure their displays and the way they handle the milk products are done correctly. So we're working with retailers on a constant basis with that thing. The latest program that has come out as far as our image program is called Healthy People, Healthy Communities, Healthy Planet. And this is really kind of the focus of what the dairy industry is all about right now. And an interesting statistic, since 1944, a gallon of milk is produced with 90% less land, 65% less water, 75% less manure, and a 63% smaller carbon footprint. So since 1944, the industry has come a long ways in how it's handled and how we deal with the issues of today. So I think we feel like we've got a message that is very sustainable as far as the industry is concerned, and something we can be very, very proud of.